Congress has opened deliberations on the proposed 6.79 trillion peso national budget for 2026, the biggest spending plan in Philippine history. The budget will shape funding for priorities like education, infrastructure, digitalization, and social services, all while the government grapples with a 19 trillion peso debt and growing demands for transparency in projects such as flood control. Senate Finance Committee Chair Sherwin Gatchalian will be at the forefront, ensuring that every peso delivers results. He joins us now to share his economic agenda and what this record budget means for business and investment. Good morning, Senator Gatchalian, and thank you for being here with us.
Good morning to our televiewers.
Okay, lots to talk about, sir, but let's start with the state of the economy from your vantage point. As Congress deliberates on the 6.79 trillion budget, how would you describe the current state of the Philippine economy?
Well, right now, the current state of the Philippine economy is under a lot of uncertainties in terms of trade and exports. Right now, with the tariffs that the U.S. will be imposing, that becomes an uncertainty for us, especially our exports. And I hope our semiconductors will be spared. For now, our semiconductor seems like in a safe place. Almost half of our exports are semiconductors, and we want to move up our semiconductor industry into high-value industries, and that's a big potential for our country. But if you have this tariffs that is hanging over our head, that becomes an uncertainty for the industry, and that also holds back a lot of the investors who want to come into our semiconductor industry. Other than that, we're growing at a modest pace at about 5%. Under the medium-term fiscal framework, we should be growing between 6 to 7% in order to outrun our debt. If we don't outrun our debt, we will not lower down our debt to GDP ratio. And that's another concern that we will be tackling during the budget deliberations.
Yeah, you mentioned growth, sir. That was 5.4% in the first half of 2025. Solid, modest, but still below targets. From a fiscal policy standpoint, what needs to change, sir, so that this budget translates to real productivity, real gains that we feel on the streets?
The 5% is respectable when you compare it to our ASEAN peers. We're growing we're the second fastest growing economy compared here in ASEAN, compared to second only to Vietnam. But we're not only competing with our ASEAN peers, we're competing with ourselves. You have to remember that our debt is still elevated at 60+% per GDP. Our deficit is still elevated at around 6%. And that's the challenge for us. We have to bring it back to pre-pandemic levels at around 30% of our GDP and about 3% of our and deficit at 3% of GDP. That's the challenge. We're competing and challenging ourselves. We want to bring it down because we don't want another pandemic to happen, and then we are at this elevated stage. We will not have any fiscal space to fight it off. So as a developing nation, we have to lower it down. Now, to answer your question directly, the Filipino people have no confidence on the budget as we speak because of this flood control issues, because of this ghost project issues. We have to bring back the confidence of our people to the budget. And that's what we aim to do this 2026, to make sure that every tax collected, every peso appropriated will redound to projects that will be felt by our constituents.
That's right. Interesting point you mentioned, flood control, the budget, really important. Let's whittle down on that, sir. In terms of benchmarks and timelines, sir, you've warned that the DPWH's 274 billion peso flood budget is on the line. How soon would we be prepared to act on this threat, and what clear benchmarks must the DPWH meet in order to keep that funding?
Reviewing the DPWH budget is not an easy task. You're talking about 9,000 plus projects, about 1 trillion pesos in terms of allocation. So scarring through each and every project is really a big task. In fact, you cannot just sit down and look at the budget. You have to go out to the field and make sure that this line item, this project will be effective on the ground, because it's different when you look at the book, it's different when you go out to the field. That's why our president, no less than our president himself, is going out to the field to double check the projects himself, no? To make sure that physically the projects are there. So it's tough, and we're employing very credible third party engineering companies. Me myself, as the chairman of the finance committee, we're tasking third party engineering companies to help us scar through the DPWH budget. We want to make sure that we're also technically capable in terms of scarring through the budget. But the basic principle here is, if the DPWH cannot prove to us that the 270 plus billion that is now appropriated in the 2026 budget, if they cannot prove to us that this will be effective and this is completely without any corruption, then we won't hesitate to rechannel that 270 plus billion pesos to education, to build classrooms instead of flood control projects.
Talking about misplaced spending, Cebu is it's glaring in a sense that Cebu received 414 flood control projects, the second highest in the country, even though it's not even in the top 10 flood-prone provinces. What does this tell you, sir, about how projects are being allocated?
Well, it goes to show that the projects being proposed by the DPWH have no rhyme or reason. This is something that we are also looking at. In fact, just yesterday, I was meeting with DBM and NEDA, and we were asking for the master plans of all these flood control projects. But it seems to me that this master plan is very difficult to get. It's not readily available, and apparently it's not being used to appropriate budget to flood control. So it goes to show that a lot of these projects are being proposed outside of the master plan, outside of all of these studies and researches, and that's what we aim to do, to make sure that the projects have basis when they include it in the budget.
On another front, sir, the issue of undercapitalized contractors comes to fore. We've seen firms with just 250,000 pesos in capital winning multi-billion peso contracts. What are your thoughts on this? What does this tell you?
We uncovered that 3 out of the 15 big contractors that have bagged big contracts from the government are sole proprietor contractors. These are individuals, and sole proprietors normally, in my experience, are used if you open up sari-sari stores, when you open up groceries or hair salons, but not to get 5 billion, 7 billion contracts, because the risk is too big to bear. No? So that's also another, for me, another red flag. How come these sole proprietors are bagging multi-billion contracts from the government, which is very unusual? So the Senate Committee on Blue Ribbon will continue to look at these details, but we will focus heavily on the ghost projects that were revealed by no less than our president and also Senator Lacson through his privilege speech.
Mm-hmm. Sir, from your vantage point as finance chair, how deep does this corruption go?
Very deep and very disappointing. A lot of people are enraged, including myself. I'm really enraged with what's happening right now. It's very difficult to convince our constituents to pay taxes or to be responsible with their tax obligations. But it pains everyone. It pains me. It pains everyone to see that their hard-earned taxes are going to ghost projects. So we will not let this go. I'm assuring the public that we will continue to push for accountability, and we will make sure that people who are responsible with this ghost projects will be put in jail.
Yeah, okay, that's how far you're going to go. You want to see them put in jail. Sir, lastly, what's your message to CEOs and investors on how the reforms and the budget, everything being implemented, on how that will translate to an easier business environment for everyone?
Well, we enacted the Create More Law when I was the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee. We enacted the Create More Law, and this is to give more incentives to potential investors and also existing investors. In fact, if the existing investors want to expand, they can retain their current incentives. And one of the most important features of Create More is to give 200% deductible on electricity. As we all know, electricity costs here in the Philippines is one of the highest in the region. So to augment that, we gave 200% deductible on their electricity costs. So that's a good feature for manufacturing companies and semiconductor companies. Again, I'm very one of my bullish industries is the semiconductor industries. I'm very bullish with that because obviously with AI, the whole world is moving into that. And the Philippines is poised to get a big chunk of that if we support our semiconductor industries and we incentivize them and let them come in and build high value semiconductor industries so that we can compete with our regional peers.
Yeah, absolutely, sir. All electronics use semiconductors, so I mean, it's going to be a primary need. And as in the Philippines case, right now we supply 5% of the world's semiconductors, and there's more of that pie to take. Thank you so much, Senator Sherwin Gatchalian, the chair of the Senate Finance Committee, for joining us this morning and sharing your insights.
Thank you very much.